The night they murdered my father, I was 10 years old, learning to bake him a chocolate cake. I never got to give it to him. But 20 years later, I gave his killer something much sweeter: revenge. 3 masked men kicked our door down. One had eyes the color of ice. He shot my dad right in front of me. He thought I was just a scared little girl. He had no idea he just created a monster. My father's last words to me were, "Close your eyes." But I kept them wide open. I watched everything, and I never forgot a single detail. 20 years later, those details became his destruction. The man who killed my father just hired me as his accountant. He has no idea who I really am. 20 years ago, I watched him shoot my dad. Now he calls me his most trusted friend. He let me live that night. Biggest mistake of his life. I didn't get revenge. I got something better. I got his trust. Then I took everything. My father's killer thinks I'm his ally. He's about to learn the truth. This is my story. I was 10 years old. The cake was for his birthday, which was the next day. I had saved my allowance for weeks to buy the special sprinkles, the little silver ones that looked like tiny ball bearings. My mom, Elena, was helping me. She was sifting flour, and there was a smudge of it on her cheek, making her look like a ghost. We were laughing because I had dropped an egg on the floor, and our dog, a big, goofy golden retriever named Gus, was having the time of his life trying to clean it up. That was the last time I heard my mother laugh. The front door didn't just open. It exploded inward. The wood splintered around the lock and the door slammed against the wall, knocking a picture to the floor. The sound was so loud, so violent, that for a second I thought it was thunder. But it was a clear, cold night in Ohio. 3 men came in. They were wearing dark clothes and their faces were covered. They moved fast, like wolves. My mom screamed and grabbed me, pulling me behind her. Gus, who had never hurt a fly in his life, started barking and ran at them. The first man didn't even hesitate. He just swung his arm and Gus yelped, a terrible, sharp sound, and then he was silent, crumpled on the floor. I remember the smell. The sharp, metallic smell of the cold air from outside mixing with the warm, sweet smell of my cake batter. I remember the flour on my mom's cheek. I remember the man's eyes over his mask. They were a pale, cold blue, like ice on a frozen pond. He looked at me, and then he looked past me. My father had come running from his study. He was a big man, but gentle. He worked as an accountant. He wore glasses, and his hair was always a mess. He wasn't a fighter. He was my dad. He shouted, "No, Elena, take Emily, go!" But there was nowhere to go. The other 2 men grabbed my mom. She fought them, scratching, kicking. I saw one of them hit her across the face, and she went limp. The man with the ice blue eyes walked toward my father. My dad stood his ground, right in the archway between the kitchen and the living room. "Please," my dad said, his voice shaking. "Whatever this is, my family has nothing to do with it." The man didn't say a word. He just pulled out a gun. It was black and it looked heavy. "Emily, close your eyes," my dad screamed. It was the last thing he ever said to me. I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. I saw everything. I saw my father's face, full of terror, but not for himself, for us. I saw the man raise the gun. I saw the flash of light, and I heard a sound like a book being slammed on a table, but 1,000 times louder. My father fell. He fell right there, in the archway, his glasses skittering across the hardwood floor. I started screaming then. I couldn't stop. The sound just kept coming from somewhere deep inside me. The man with the ice blue eyes looked at me again. He took 1 step toward me. I thought he was going to kill me too. I wanted him to. I wanted it to be over, but one of the other men grabbed his arm. "Leave her," he said. "We got what we came for. Let's go." And then, just like that, they were gone. The front door was hanging open, letting in the freezing air. Gus wasn't moving. My mom was slumped against the wall, blood on her face. And my dad was lying on the floor in a pool of blood that was spreading, dark and terrible, across the old wood. That was 20 years ago. My name is Emily, Emily Reed, and I have spent every single day since then preparing for this moment. Not just preparing to kill, but preparing to understand. To understand how a man could take a life and then go on living as if nothing happened. To understand how the world could keep turning when my world had stopped. The police came. They asked a million questions. They told us my father wasn't just an accountant. He was an accountant for a man named Victor Morty. And Victor Morty was the head of the most powerful crime family in the Midwest. My father, the man who helped me with my math homework and cried at cartoons, had been laundering money for the mob. He had made a mistake, a big one. He had kept a second set of books, a secret ledger that showed where all the money really went. The men who came that night were there to get it back. They got it, and they got my father. I remember sitting in the police station, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like coffee and cigarettes, listening to the detectives talk. They didn't think I was listening. They thought I was in shock, which I was, but I heard every word. I heard them say that my father was a criminal. I heard them say that he had brought this on himself. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to tell them that they were wrong. My father was not a criminal, he was my dad. He read me bedtime stories, he taught me how to ride a bike. He cried when I fell and scraped my knee, but they didn't care about that. They cared about the money. They cared about the mob. They cared about their case. My mom was never the same. Something broke inside her that night. She would just sit by the window, staring out at the street, waiting for a man who was never coming home. She stopped cooking. She stopped cleaning. She stopped talking. I would come home from school and find her in the same spot, in the same clothes, staring at nothing. I learned to make my own meals. I learned to do my own laundry. I learned to be invisible. She died 5 years later. The doctors called it a heart condition. I called it a broken heart. I was 15. I was alone. I was sent to live with my Aunt Sarah, my mom's sister. She was a good woman, kind, but she didn't understand the fire that was burning inside me. She wanted me to go to therapy, to talk about my feelings, to move on. But I didn't want to move on. Moving on felt like forgetting. And forgetting felt like betraying them. Aunt Sarah tried. She really did. She took me to a therapist, a nice woman with soft hands and a gentle voice who asked me how I felt. I told her I felt fine. I told her I was adjusting. I lied. The therapist knew I was lying, but she didn't push. She just nodded and wrote things in her notebook. At night, I would lie in bed and plan. I would imagine different scenarios. I would imagine finding the men who killed my father and confronting them. I would imagine them begging for mercy. I would imagine their faces when they realized who I was. These fantasies were the only thing that got me through the night. The police never found the killers. The case went cold. Victor Morty, they said, was untouchable. He lived in a big house outside the city, protected by lawyers and money and silence. I learned to be silent too. I was a good student. I was quiet, polite, never caused any trouble. I went to college and studied accounting, just like my dad. It was my way of staying close to him. But at night, in my small dorm room, I would study other things. I would look up the Morty family. I would read old news articles about their crimes, their trials that always ended in acquittals, their witnesses who always seemed to disappear. I learned their names. Victor Morty, the old Don. His son, Marco, a hothead who loved fast cars and faster women. And his other son, the oldest, the one who was being groomed to take over. The one the papers called the Prince of the Midwest. The one with the cold, calculating eyes. The one who, according to a grainy photograph from a charity event I found online, had eyes the color of ice on a frozen pond. Nico Morty, my father's killer. I didn't just learn their names, I learned everything. I learned what restaurants they ate at, what charities they supported, what churches they attended. I learned that Nico Morty was a businessman now, a legitimate businessman. He ran a chain of high-end hotels. He was respected. He was rich. He was free, and I was a ghost haunting the edges of his world. College was a strange time for me. On the surface, I was normal. I went to classes. I made a few friends. I even went to parties sometimes, though I never drank too much. I couldn't afford to lose control. I had to stay sharp. I had to stay focused. But inside, I was empty. I felt nothing. Not joy, not sadness, not excitement, just a cold, steady purpose. It was like I was living my life on autopilot, going through the motions, while the real me was somewhere else, planning, waiting, preparing. I dated a little. Nothing serious. I couldn't let anyone get close. They would ask questions. They would want to know about my past. They would want to know why I sometimes woke up screaming in the middle of the night. It was easier to be alone. After college, I got a job. Not just any job. I got a job at a small, prestigious accounting firm in the city. I was brilliant. I worked harder than anyone else. I never made mistakes. I was the perfect employee. After 3 years, I was promoted to senior accountant. After 5, I was made a partner. And the firm's biggest client, the one I personally requested to handle, the Morty Hotel Group. Getting that assignment wasn't easy. I had to work for it. I had to prove myself. I had to be better than everyone else. And I made sure of it. I stayed late. I came in early. I volunteered for the hardest projects. I made myself indispensable. When the position opened up to handle the Morty account, I was the obvious choice. No one questioned it. No one suspected anything. Why would they? I was just a quiet, hardworking accountant. I had no connection to the Morty family. I was safe. I walked into his office for the first time on a Tuesday. It was a corner office, high up in a glass tower with a view of the whole city. The city where my father was buried. The door was opened by an assistant, and there he was. Nico Morty. He was older now, of course. He was in his early 40s. His hair was still dark, but there was a little gray at the temples. He was even more handsome than in the pictures, but in a cold, hard way. He was wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He stood up when I walked in and smiled. It was a charming smile, a businessman's smile, but his eyes were the same, that pale, frozen blue. "Miss Emily," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Please come in. I've heard wonderful things about you. They say you're the best." I shook his hand. His grip was firm, confident. My hand was steady. My heart was a drum against my ribs, but my face was a mask of pleasant professionalism. "Thank you, Mr. Morty," I said. "It's an honor to work with you." For the next 3 years, I was his accountant. I was the best he ever had. I found him tax breaks he didn't know existed. I streamlined his finances. I made him millions of dollars. He trusted me. He began to rely on me. He would invite me to meetings, to lunches, to dinners. He would talk to me about his plans, his dreams for his empire. He never knew that every time he looked at me, I saw my father falling. Every time he smiled, I heard my mother's silent crying. He saw me as a tool, a brilliant, useful tool. He didn't see the hatred. He didn't see the 10-year-old girl hiding in my eyes, the one who was still screaming. The first year was the hardest. Every time I was in his presence, I had to fight the urge to do something rash, to scream at him, to attack him, to pull out a gun and end it, but I controlled myself. I had to. A quick death was too easy. He needed to suffer. He needed to lose everything just like I had, so I waited. I watched. I learned. He started to confide in me, not just about business, but about his family. He spoke bitterly about his father, Victor, who was still alive, still the Don, still pulling the strings from his mansion. He spoke with contempt about his brother, Marco, a reckless fool who was a liability. He saw himself as the future, the one who would drag the Morty name out of the gutter and into the boardrooms of the world. He thought I was his ally. He thought I admired him. He once even said to me over a glass of expensive wine, "You know, Emily, you remind me of myself. Focused, driven, you don't let anything get in your way." You have no idea, I thought. You have no idea what is in my way. You are. I started planning. It wasn't a quick plan. It wasn't a violent plan. A bullet would be too easy. It would be over in a second. It would make him a martyr. It wouldn't make him suffer. It wouldn't make him feel what my father felt, what my mother felt, what I felt every single day for 20 years. I wanted to take everything from him, just like he took everything from me. The first year was about building trust. I made myself indispensable. I worked weekends. I took calls at midnight. I solved problems before he even knew they existed. I learned every detail of his business, his habits, his weaknesses. I knew that he had a temper, that he was prideful, that he could be cruel. I also knew that he was smart, careful, and paranoid. He trusted no one completely. But over time, he began to trust me. I remember one night, we were working late on a deal. It was past 11. He ordered dinner for us, Italian food from his favorite restaurant. We ate in his office, looking out at the city lights. He talked about his mother, who had died when he was young. He talked about how his father had been distant, how he had raised himself in a way. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered my father's face, the way his glasses skittered across the floor, and the feeling passed. He trusted me with small secrets at first, then bigger ones. He told me about a bribe he had paid to a city official to get a zoning permit. He told me about a union leader he had threatened to get a construction deal. He told me these things like they were proof of his power, his cleverness. He didn't realize he was handing me weapons. I kept a journal. Not a paper journal, that would be too dangerous. I kept it in my head. Every secret, every weakness, every piece of information that could be used against him. I filed it away, waiting for the right moment. The second year, I started to look for leverage. I needed someone close to him, someone who could be turned. That's when I found Marco. Marco was everything Nico wasn't. He was loud, impulsive, and greedy. He was also deeply in debt. He had a gambling problem, a drug problem, and a string of failed businesses. Nico kept him on a short leash, giving him just enough money to stay out of trouble, but not enough to do any real damage. Marco resented it. He resented Nico's success, his control, his perfect image. I started with Marco. I cultivated him. At company parties, I would pay him extra attention. I would listen to his complaints about his brother with a sympathetic ear. I would subtly agree that it wasn't fair, that he was just as much a Morty as Nico was. Over time, I became his friend, his confidant, the one person who understood him. It wasn't hard. Marco was desperate for approval, for someone to take him seriously. His father ignored him. His brother dismissed him. His so-called friends only wanted his money, which he didn't have much of anymore. When I came along, offering a sympathetic ear and a genuine interest in his problems, he latched onto me like a drowning man. We would meet for drinks after work. He would complain about Nico, about his father, about his debts. I would listen and nod and make sympathetic noises. Sometimes I would offer advice, always carefully, always making it seem like his idea. "You know, Marco," I said one night, "you're smarter than people give you credit for. You have good ideas, you just need the right opportunity." He puffed up at the praise. "You think so? I know so. The problem is Nico doesn't want you to succeed. He's threatened by you." Marco nodded vigorously. "That's exactly right. He's always been jealous of me. I'm the charming one. I'm the one people like. He's just cold and calculating." "Exactly," I agreed. One night at a bar, after he'd had too much to drink, he spilled his guts. He told me about a side deal he was trying to make. He wanted to bring a new partner into the family business, a group of investors from overseas. It was a deal Nico would never approve of. The investors were dangerous. They were Russian. They wanted to use the Morty hotels to launder their own money. "It's millions, Emily," Marco slurred, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Millions, and Nico won't even listen. He thinks he's too good for it. He thinks he's too good for me." I saw my opening, a tiny crack in the foundation of the Morty empire. "Marco," I said, leaning in close, my voice a whisper, "if you really want to do this, you can't let Nico stop you. You need to be smart about it. You need to have leverage." "Leverage? What kind of leverage?" "The kind that would ruin him if he tried to stand in your way," I said. I didn't give him the idea. I just planted the seed. I knew Marco's greedy, desperate mind would water it. A few weeks later, he came to me, excited and nervous. He had done it. He had hired someone to break into Nico's home office. They hadn't stolen anything. They had taken pictures. Pictures of documents, private documents. The kind of documents that showed Nico was not quite the legitimate businessman he pretended to be. There were old ledgers, connections to his father's world, evidence of bribes and deals that had never been made public. Marco thought he was holding the winning hand. He thought he could force Nico to let him have his Russian deal. He was wrong. He had just handed me the keys to the kingdom. I knew Nico. I knew he would never let anyone, not even his own brother, hold something like that over him. It was a threat to everything he had built. The moment Marco showed his hand, Nico would destroy him, and in doing so, he would destroy himself. But I couldn't rush. I had to be patient. I had to let the poison work slowly. The next step was to isolate Nico, to make him feel like the walls were closing in. I started with his father, Victor. The old Don was sick. He was in his late 70s, frail, but his mind was still sharp. He still held the ultimate power in the family. I knew he had never fully trusted Nico. Nico was too modern, too ambitious. Victor was old school. He valued loyalty above all else. I needed to make Victor doubt his son's loyalty. It was easy. I was the accountant. I had access to everything. I made a few small adjustments in some reports, nothing illegal, just ambiguous. I created a paper trail that suggested Nico was skimming money from some of the older, more traditional family businesses, the ones Victor still cared about. I then made sure a copy of these ambiguous reports found their way to Victor's personal lawyer, an old man who was fiercely loyal to the Don. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The suspicion was planted. I could feel the tension in the air the next time I was at a family gathering, invited as Nico's trusted advisor. Victor's eyes, cloudy with age but still sharp, followed his son with a new, cold calculation. Nico, oblivious, tried to charm his father, but Victor was distant. I watched them from across the room, sipping my wine, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the alcohol. It was working. The pieces were falling into place. Then there was the Russian deal. Marco, feeling empowered by his secret leverage, went behind Nico's back. He met with the Russians. He started making plans. I knew Nico had people everywhere, watching everything. It was only a matter of time before he found out. The explosion, when it came, was spectacular. I was in my office when Nico stormed in, his face white with rage, his ice-blue eyes blazing. "He's done it," Nico seethed, slamming a file on my desk. "My idiot brother, he's made a deal with the fucking Russians." I looked at the file, my face a mask of concern. "Oh no, Nico, this is bad. If your father finds out." "He won't find out," Nico said, pacing like a caged animal. "I'll handle it. I'll handle Marco. I'll make him disappear." "You can't just make him disappear, Nico," I said, my voice calm and reasonable. "He's your brother, and he's not stupid. He wouldn't do this without some kind of insurance." Nico stopped pacing and looked at me. The rage in his eyes flickered, replaced by something else. A flicker of doubt, of fear. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said carefully, "that if I were Marco, and I was about to do something that would make my powerful brother want to kill me, I would make sure I had something to protect myself. Something that would ruin you if anything happened to him." The color drained from Nico's face. He knew his brother had something on him. He spent the next week in a frenzy. He hired private investigators. He had Marco's apartment bugged, his phones tapped. He was paranoid, looking over his shoulder, jumping at every shadow. He stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. The confident, charming businessman was gone. In his place was a terrified, cornered animal. He came to me more and more. I was his only confidant, the only person he trusted. I would listen to his fears, his plans, his rants. I would offer him calm, reasonable advice. All the while, I was turning the screws. "You need to find out what he has," I told him one night. "You need to know what you're dealing with." "I'm trying," he said, running his hands through his hair. "My guys are watching him. They're following him, but he's being careful. He knows I'm onto him." "Then you need to be smarter," I said. "You need to anticipate his next move." I made sure Victor got wind of the Russian deal, not directly, of course. Just a whisper, a rumor, that reached his ears through a trusted channel. I made sure he also heard that Nico knew about it and was doing nothing to stop it. That Nico was too weak to control his own brother, too scared to act. Victor summoned Nico to the mansion. I wasn't there, but Nico came to me afterwards, his hands shaking. He looked like a broken man. He threatened to disown me," Nico whispered. "My own father. He said if I can't control my family, I'm not fit to lead it. He's calling a meeting. A council. He's going to let the other families decide." A council. In the mafia, a council was the last resort. It was where the heads of the families would gather to judge one of their own. To be summoned before the council was a humiliation. To be judged by them was a death sentence, either literally or figuratively. Nico's reputation, his power, his entire future was hanging by a thread. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "What do I do, Emily? What do I do?" I looked back at him. I saw the man who had murdered my father. I saw the terror in his eyes. And for the first time in 20 years, I felt something other than hatred. I felt satisfaction. "Nico," I said softly, "there's only one thing you can do. You have to prove your loyalty to your father. You have to prove you can handle the problem. You have to deal with Marco yourself." He stared at me. "Kill my own brother? It's the only way," I said. "Show your father you have the strength to do what needs to be done. Then give him the evidence you have on Marco. Show him you were trying to protect the family. It's the only chance you have." He was silent for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "You're right. You're always right." I gave him the final push. I had access to Marco's schedule. I knew he would be at his apartment alone the next night. I told Nico. The next morning, the news broke. Marco Morty was found dead in his apartment, an apparent robbery gone wrong. The police were investigating, but the whispers in the city were different. They said Nico had done it. They said he had killed his own brother to prove a point. The news hit Victor hard. He loved Marco, despite his faults. Marco was his baby. He was devastated. And in his grief, his suspicion of Nico turned into a cold, hard certainty. The council meeting was held a week later. I wasn't there, but I heard about it from a terrified underling who came to clean out Nico's office afterward. Victor had presented his evidence, the ambiguous financial records I had planted, the story of Nico's inaction on the Russian deal, and the final, damning piece, the fact that his own son had murdered his brother to save his own skin. Nico tried to defend himself. He presented his own evidence, the pictures Marco had taken from his house. He tried to paint Marco as the traitor, but it was too late. He had killed his brother. That was a sin the old men on the council could not forgive. It showed a lack of control, a lack of honor. It showed he was a danger to them all. The council's judgment was swift. Nico was stripped of his title. He was banished from the family business. He was, for all intents and purposes, dead to them. He was allowed to keep his legitimate businesses, the hotels, but his connection to the Morty crime family was severed forever. He was an outcast. I watched the news reports from my apartment. I saw the vultures from the press circling outside his hotel headquarters. I saw his face, pale and drawn, as he pushed through the crowd, saying nothing. The prince of the Midwest had fallen. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. He still had his hotels. He still had his money. He still had his life. I wanted him to lose everything. I wanted him to know what it felt like to have nothing. The next phase of my plan began. I started with his businesses. I knew them inside and out. I knew their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. I began to subtly undermine them. A small mistake here, a delayed payment there. Nothing that could be traced back to me, but enough to cause problems. A key supplier suddenly had a shipping delay. An important permit got held up in bureaucratic red tape. A health inspection at one of his flagship hotels turned up violations that had never been there before. Nico was distracted, consumed by his family problems, and he didn't notice at first. By the time he did, the damage was done. His hotels were losing money, his reputation was suffering. The business he had built was crumbling. He came to me desperate. "Emily, what's happening? The hotels, they're falling apart. I don't understand." I looked at him with fake concern. "I've noticed, Nico. I've been looking into it. I think someone is sabotaging you." Who would do this?" "I don't know yet," I lied, "but I'm working on it." I wasn't working on it. I was the one doing it, but he didn't know that. He trusted me. He needed me. While he was distracted by his failing businesses, I turned my attention to his personal life. Nico was married. His wife, Isabella, was a beautiful woman from an old, respected family. She was cold and ambitious, much like Nico himself. They had a son, a boy of about 10. I had seen him at company picnics, a quiet, sad-looking child who seemed to have inherited his father's cold eyes. I knew that Isabella had her own secrets. I had seen her at restaurants with other men, handsome, younger men who were not her husband. I had heard the whispers from the staff. I had filed the information away, waiting for the right moment to use it. The right moment came when Nico was at his lowest. His businesses were failing. His father had disowned him. His brother was dead because of him. He was alone, isolated, desperate. I arranged for him to receive an anonymous letter. It contained photographs of his wife with one of her lovers, along with details of their meetings, their gifts, their plans. The letter suggested that she was planning to leave him to take their son and half his remaining money. Nico was devastated. He confronted Isabella. She denied it at first, but the evidence was too strong. She admitted everything. She told him she had never loved him, that she had married him for his money and his name. Now that both were gone, she wanted out. The divorce was ugly and public. Isabella took their son and moved back to her family. Nico was left alone in his big house, with nothing but his guilt and his memories. He came to me one night, drunk and crying. It was the first time I had ever seen him cry. He looked small, pathetic, broken. "Everyone leaves me, Emily," he sobbed. "My father, my brother, my wife, my son. Everyone, I have nothing, nothing." I sat across from him, my face carefully blank. Inside, I was dancing. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. He was finally feeling what I had felt. The loss, the emptiness, the despair. "You still have me, Nico," I said softly. "I'm still here." He looked at me with grateful, tear-filled eyes. "You're the only one, Emily. The only one who ever truly understood me." If only he knew, but I wasn't done yet. He still had his money. He still had his hotels, even if they were failing. He still had a life. I wanted him to have nothing, absolutely nothing. The final phase of my plan was the most dangerous. It required me to risk everything I had built. I knew that Nico, despite his downfall, still had enemies. The Russians that Marco had tried to deal with were not happy about the deal falling through. They had lost money, and they blamed the Morty family. Specifically, they blamed Nico. I reached out to them. It was risky, incredibly risky. If they discovered who I really was, they would kill me without a second thought. But I was careful. I used a burner phone. I used a false name. I met them in dark, crowded places where no one would notice us. I told them that Nico was vulnerable. I told them that his businesses were failing, that he was alone, that he had no protection from his family anymore. I told them that if they wanted revenge for the failed deal, now was the time. They were interested, very interested. A few weeks later, Nico's remaining hotels were hit with a series of problems. Fires, vandalism, labor strikes. The Russians were making their move. Nico tried to fight back, but he had no one. His family had abandoned him. His friends had disappeared. He was alone. He came to me one last time. It was late at night. He looked terrible, like a ghost of the man he had once been. His clothes were wrinkled. His face was gaunt. His eyes, those ice blue eyes, were hollow and dead. "Emily," he said, his voice a whisper. "They're coming for me, the Russians. They're going to kill me." I looked at him. 20 years of hatred, 20 years of planning, 20 years of waiting, and it had all come down to this moment. "I know," I said. He stared at me, confused. "You know, how do you know?" "Because I told them," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "I told them everything." He stared at me, his mouth open, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You, why? Why would you do that? I trusted you. You were my only friend." I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the city, the same city I had looked at 1,000 times from this very office. The city where my father was buried. "My name is Emily Reed," I said, not turning around. "My father was Thomas Reed. He was an accountant. 20 years ago, 3 men broke into our house. They killed our dog. They beat my mother. And one of them, a man with ice blue eyes, shot my father dead in front of me." I turned to face him. The color had drained from his face. He was as white as a ghost. "You," he breathed. "You're that little girl." "I'm that little girl," I said, "and I have been waiting for this moment for 20 years. He started to shake his head, backing away from me. "It wasn't personal. It was business. Your father made a mistake. He stole from us. He knew the risks." "He was my dad," I said, my voice finally cracking just a little. "He helped me with my math homework. He was going to blow out the candles on a chocolate cake. He didn't know any risks. He was just trying to provide for his family." Nico's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. He lunged for the phone on his desk. I was faster. I pulled a small, silver gun from my pocket. It was my father's old gun. I had found it in my mother's things after she died. She had kept it, hoping, I think, that one day I would have the chance to use it. Nico froze, his hand hovering over the phone. "You won't shoot me," he said, trying to regain some of his old arrogance. "You're not a killer, you're an accountant." "You're right," I said. "I'm not a killer. I'm something much worse. I'm the girl who took everything from you. I'm the one who turned your brother against you. I'm the one who made your father doubt you. I'm the one who led you to kill your own flesh and blood. I'm the one who destroyed your marriage, your businesses, your reputation. I didn't pull the trigger on Marco, Nico. You did, but I aimed the gun." The realization dawned on his face. The pieces clicked into place. The too perfect accountant, the sympathetic ear, the helpful advice, the anonymous letters. The Russian contacts, it was all me. You did this," he breathed. "All of it?" "All of it," I confirmed. "For my mother, for my dog, for my dad." He sank into his chair, his legs giving out. He looked small, broken, old. The fear was gone, replaced by a deep, hollow despair. He understood now. He had lost everything. His family, his power, his reputation, his future, his money, his wife, his son. And it was all because of a little girl he had decided not to kill 20 years ago. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I didn't see the monster. I just saw a man. A pathetic, ruined man. "So what now?" he asked, his voice a whisper. "Are you going to kill me?" I looked at him. I looked at the gun in my hand. It would be so easy. One pull of the trigger and it would be over. I could finally have my peace. But then I thought of my father. I thought of his last words to me. "Emily, close your eyes." He didn't want me to see violence. He didn't want that for me. He wanted to protect me from it, even in his last moment. Killing Nico wouldn't bring my father back. It wouldn't heal my mother's broken heart. It would just make me like him. It would make me a killer. I lowered the gun. "No," I said. "I'm not going to kill you. Living is your punishment. You have to wake up every day for the rest of your life knowing that you have nothing. No family, no respect, no future. You have to live with what you did to your own brother, knowing that it was all for nothing. You have to live with the fact that a girl you dismissed as nothing outsmarted you, destroyed you, and took everything you loved." I put the gun back in my pocket. He just stared at me, his mouth open, his eyes empty. "Goodbye, Nico," I said. I walked out of his office. I walked past his terrified assistant, who was the only employee left. I walked into the elevator and rode down to the lobby. I walked out of the glass tower and into the cold night air. It was the same kind of night as the one 20 years ago, clear and cold. I looked up at the stars and thought of my mother and father. I thought of Gus. I thought of the chocolate cake I never got to bake. And for the first time in 20 years, I felt the tight, cold knot of hatred in my chest begin to loosen. It wasn't gone. It would never be completely gone. But it was loosening. I didn't go home. I went to the cemetery. I stood by my parents' grave for a long time. I told them it was done. I told them I was okay. I told them I loved them. A few weeks later, I read in the paper that Nico Morty had been found dead in his apartment. An apparent suicide. He had left a note, but the police didn't release the contents. I wondered what it said. I wondered if he mentioned me. I hoped he didn't. I wanted to be free of him, finally. His death didn't bring me joy. It didn't bring me peace. It just brought me a strange, quiet sense of closure. The story was over. I still live in that city. I'm still an accountant. I have a small house now with a big backyard. And I have a new dog, a silly, goofy golden retriever I named Gus. Sometimes, when I'm baking, usually a simple vanilla cake, I'll look out the window and watch him chase butterflies in the yard. And I think about my father. I think about how he would have loved to see me now, how he would have laughed at Gus, how he would have asked for a second slice of cake. The pain is still there, it always will be. But it doesn't control me anymore. It's just a part of me like a scar, a reminder of what I lost and what I survived. But sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about Nico. I think about his final moments, alone in his apartment, with nothing and no one. I wonder if he thought about that night, about my father, about me. I wonder if he regretted it. And then I think about something my mother used to say. She would say that revenge is a dish best served cold. She was right. It is cold. So cold that it freezes a part of your soul. But sometimes, that cold is the only thing that keeps you going. I don't regret what I did. I don't feel guilty. Nico Morty took my father from me. He took my mother. He took my childhood. He deserved everything he got and more. But I also don't feel proud. Revenge didn't heal me. It didn't bring my family back. It just ended a chapter. It closed a door. Now I have to live with what I did. I have to live with the lies, the manipulation, the destruction I caused. I have to live with the fact that I became just as cold and calculating as the man I hated. But I also get to live. I get to wake up every morning and see the sun. I get to bake cakes and watch my dog chase butterflies. I get to remember my father with love instead of rage. And maybe that's the real victory. Not revenge, not justice, but survival. My name is Emily Reed. I am the daughter of Thomas Reed. I am the woman who destroyed Nico Morty, and I am still here. The night they killed my father, I was learning to bake a chocolate cake. I never did finish that cake. But last week, for the first time, I baked one. It was for no reason, just because I wanted to. It was chocolate with silver sprinkles. It wasn't perfect. The cake was a little dry and the frosting was too sweet. But it was mine. I made it. I cut a slice and put it on a plate. I took it outside and sat on the porch, watching Gus run around the yard. I ate that slice of cake and I thought about my father. I thought about how proud he would be. Not because I destroyed a man, but because I survived. Because I'm still here, living my life, finding moments of happiness. The cake tasted like freedom. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if the Russians will ever figure out my role in everything. I don't know if Victor Morty, old and frail as he is, will ever learn the truth. I don't know if Marco's death will ever come back to haunt me. But for now, I'm okay. For now, I'm at peace. I have a life. I have a dog. I have memories of my parents that don't make me cry anymore. And I have a recipe for chocolate cake. That's enough. That has to be enough. Sometimes I go back to the old neighborhood. The house where I grew up is still there, but it's been painted a different color. New people live there now. They have children. I see them playing in the yard, and I wonder if they know what happened there. I wonder if the house remembers. I don't go inside. I just drive by, slow, and look. The archway where my father fell is probably still there. The kitchen where my mother and I baked that cake is probably still there. But it's not my home anymore. It's just a house. My home is the small house with the big backyard. It's where I live with Gus. It's where I bake cakes and read books and watch the seasons change. It's where I've learned to be happy again. I still think about revenge sometimes. I think about what I did to Nico, and I wonder if I could have done it differently. If I could have been satisfied with less. If I could have let go of the hatred sooner. But I can't change the past. None of us can. All we can do is move forward, carry our scars, and try to find some peace. I found mine. It took 20 years, and it cost more than I ever imagined. But I found it. And that's my story. The story of a little girl who lost everything and a woman who took it all back. Not with a gun, not with violence, but with patience, with cunning, with a cold, burning hatred that never died. Until it did. Until I let it go. My name is Emily Reed, and I am free. But freedom, I've learned, is not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of a new one. A few months after Nico's death, I got a call. It was late at night, and I was almost asleep. The phone rang, and I answered it without thinking. Emily Reed, a voice said. It was a man's voice, deep and rough, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Yes, I said, my heart suddenly racing. We need to meet. Who is this? Someone who knows what you did. I sat up in bed, my mind spinning. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. The Morty family, Nico, Marco, the Russians, we know everything. I was silent for a long moment. Then I said, Who are you? My name is Alexei Volkov. I'm the man you met with, the one you told about Nico. We have unfinished business. My blood ran cold. The Russians, they had found me. I don't have anything to say to you, I said, and I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened to the message. Emily, the voice said, you helped us. You gave us information that was very valuable, but now we have a problem. Victor Morty is asking questions. He wants to know who was really behind his son's death. He's offering a lot of money for information. We need to talk, for your safety and for ours. Meet me tomorrow night, the old warehouse on 5th Street, 9 o'clock. Come alone. The message ended. I sat in the dark, my heart pounding, my mind racing. Victor Morty was asking questions. The old Don, frail and sick as he was still dangerous. If he found out what I had done, he would kill me. He would kill me slowly, painfully. I had a choice. I could run. I could disappear, change my name, start over somewhere else. Or I could meet with the Russians and see what they wanted. I thought about my father. I thought about my mother. I thought about all the years I had spent planning, waiting, sacrificing. I hadn't come this far to run away now. The next night, I went to the warehouse. It was an old building on the edge of the city, abandoned and dark. I parked my car a block away and walked. The streets were empty. The only sound was my footsteps on the pavement. I found the door. It was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The warehouse was dark, filled with old machinery and shadows. I couldn't see anyone. Hello, I called out. A light clicked on, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. And under it, 3 men. I recognized Alexei from our previous meetings. He was a big man with a shaved head and cold eyes. The other 2 were younger, harder, with the look of men who had killed before. Emily, Alexei said, smiling, thank you for coming. What do you want? I asked. My voice was steady, even though my heart was racing. We have a problem, he said. Victor Morty, he's offering $5 million for information about who destroyed his family. $5 million. That's a lot of money. Are you going to take it? I asked. He laughed. No, we're not. We're businessmen. We don't kill the people who help us. But Victor won't stop looking. He has resources, he has men. Eventually, he will find you. So, what do you suggest? We suggest you disappear. Leave the country, start over somewhere else. We can help you, we have connections. We can give you a new identity, a new life. I looked at them. 3 Russian gangsters offering to help me. It was strange. It was surreal. Why would you do that? I asked. Because you helped us. And because Victor Morty is our enemy too. If he finds you, he might find us. It's better for everyone if you disappear. I thought about it. My house, my dog, my job, my life, everything I had built. I would have to leave it all behind. But I would also have to leave behind the danger. The fear. The constant looking over my shoulder. How long do I have? I asked. A week, maybe less. Victor's men are already in the city. They're asking questions. It won't take them long to find you. I nodded slowly. Okay. I'll do it. Alexei smiled. Good, we'll be in touch. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. Emily, he said, one more thing, Nico Morty, he didn't kill himself. I turned back, my heart freezing in my chest. What? He was killed, we killed him, he was going to talk, he was going to tell his father everything. We couldn't let that happen. I stared at him. Nico had been murdered, by the Russians, because of me. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I want you to know, you're not alone in this. We're in this together now. You helped us. We helped you, that's how it works. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and walked out of the warehouse. The cold air hit me like a wall. I leaned against the building, my legs weak, my mind spinning. Nico had been murdered, the Russians had killed him, and I was partly responsible. I should have felt something. Guilt, horror, remorse, but I felt nothing. Just a strange, hollow emptiness. I went home, I packed a bag, I called a friend to take Gus. I told her I was going on a trip, that I didn't know when I'd be back. She didn't ask questions. She just said she'd take care of him. A week later, I was on a plane to a country I'd never heard of, with a new name and a new passport. I left behind everything. My house, my job, my dog, my life, but I also left behind the fear. The danger, the ghosts. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever go back. I don't know if Victor Morty will ever find me. But for now, I'm safe, I'm alive, I'm free. And sometimes, when I'm alone in my new apartment in this strange new city, I think about my father. I think about the chocolate cake we never got to bake. I think about my mother's laugh and Gus's wagging tail. And I know that no matter where I go, no matter what name I use, they will always be with me. My name is Emily Reed. That's my real name. The name my father gave me. The name my mother whispered when she tucked me into bed. And this is my story.